The tension was palpable from the moment the cameras started rolling. Fans are shocked, rumors are flying, and social media is buzzing with disbelief. Producers, QUIT. Kirk and Joc's violent clash has officially sent shockwaves through the show, leaving everyone wondering if this beloved series can survive. What began as a seemingly normal day on set quickly spiraled into chaos. Voices were raised, accusations were hurled, and what was supposed to be a routine taping turned into a full-blown showdown between Kirk and Joc, two of the most unpredictable personalities on reality TV. Emotions ran high as the crew scrambled to maintain order, but even their efforts couldn't contain the storm. Cameras caught every moment. Kirk, his face flushed with anger, pointing fingers and shouting over Joc's equally fiery retorts. Joc, refusing to back down, retaliated with words so cutting they left the staff in stunned silence. Friends of the cast have revealed behind the scenes whispers that hinted at mounting tension for weeks, but nobody could have anticipated this level of confrontation. The family was left divided, alliances shattered, and the atmosphere on set grew so toxic that producers reportedly walked off, leaving the show in literal limbo. Fans are desperate for answers. How did it escalate so quickly? Who crossed the line first? And most importantly, is reconciliation even possible? In this video, we'll take you inside the chaos, relive every heated argument, betrayal, and shocking twist, and reveal the aftermath that has everyone talking. Buckle up, because the drama doesn't just knock on the door, it kicks it down, leaving a trail of heartbreak, anger, and unanswered questions in its wake. You won't believe what went down when Kirk and Joc finally faced off. The cameras barely had time to adjust before the tension exploded. Kirk stormed onto the set, his face tight with anger, muttering under his breath as he scanned the room for Joc. You could feel the electricity in the air, the kind that makes everyone instinctively hold their breath. Crew members whispered to each other, glancing nervously at the two stars who had always brought drama but never to this level. Joc appeared from the opposite side of the studio, eyes wide, jaw clenched, the storm within her barely contained. "You think you can just walk all over me again?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the walls, startling the camera operators who froze mid. Kirk's reply came like a clap of thunder, cutting through the tense silence. "I've had it with your games, Joc. You've pushed too far this time." The words themselves might have been enough to ignite a normal argument, but in this charged atmosphere, they acted as fuel thrown onto a roaring fire. Emotions ran high. The producers tried to intervene, moving cautiously between them, hands raised in a gesture that usually calms tempers, but this time, the usual charm of authority fell flat. The history between Kirk and Joc wasn't unknown. Everyone on set knew of the subtle jabs, the veiled insults exchanged behind the scenes, the constant tension that had simmered like a dormant volcano. What nobody expected was that the volcano had decided to erupt now, in front of cameras and crew, in front of fans who had long adored the show for its messy yet entertaining moments. Voices escalated, accusations flying, each sentence carrying weight far beyond words. "You never listen. You never care about anyone but yourself," Joc screamed, her hands flailing as if to physically push away the pain she had carried for weeks. Kirk's face reddened, his nostrils flaring. "Oh, don't start with the victim act. You're the one who's been sabotaging everything behind my back." A collective gasp ran through the room. Even the cameramen, trained for chaos, struggled to keep up with the rapid back. The family that had been on set for various episodes, the children, the extended relatives, even close friends stood frozen, caught in the whirlwind of raw emotion. Their faces reflected shock, concern, and a creeping fear. Could this escalate beyond words? What would come next? The crew whispered rumors of past conflicts that had always been carefully edited out, conflicts that had been simmering beneath the surface, only now boiling over in an unedited, brutal display. It became clear that this was not just another fight for ratings or camera time. This was personal, deeply personal. Joc's hands trembled as she pulled herself closer to Kirk, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You think this is about the show? No, Kirk, this is about everything you've done behind my back. Every lie, every betrayal. It ends today." Kirk's response was sharp, almost mechanical, but laced with his own mounting anger. "And you think I don't know about your schemes? You've been playing everyone, Joc, everyone." The shouting match grew louder, echoing through the studio and spilling into the hallways where other staff members had gathered, listening in disbelief. Some tried to intervene physically, others verbally, but the two stars were caught in a cycle that seemed impossible to break. The producers, in a rare display of vulnerability, conferred hurriedly in a corner, whispering furiously to each other. "If this keeps up, we might have to pull the plug on today's taping," one muttered, fear evident in his voice. It's getting out of control. The cameras aren't even capturing the full chaos. Fans who were watching live feeds and snippets posted online were equally shocked. Social media blew up with speculation, memes, and outrage. The hashtags began trending within minutes, capturing moments of the clash. Hashtag Kirk vs JOC. Hashtag Showdown. Hashtag Producers Quit. Hashtag Drama Explodes. The internet became a battleground, mirroring the chaos on set, each comment a mini-drama of its own. Back inside, the conflict deepened. Joc's friends on set tried to calm her, but their presence only seemed to make Kirk defensive, escalating his frustration further. "Stay out of this. This isn't about you," he yelled, sending one of her allies reeling backward. The emotional intensity was almost tangible. It hung in the air like smoke, suffocating and relentless. Voices were shaky now, anger mixed with fear, pain, and disbelief. Someone dropped a camera in the scuffle, the loud crash punctuating the verbal assault like a drumbeat in a symphony of chaos. The family, caught in the crossfire, exchanged glances that conveyed silent messages of worry and panic. Everyone knew that lines were being crossed, that reputations were being damaged, and that the fallout would be massive. The producers, unable to contain the chaos any longer, made a decision that shocked everyone even more. They walked off. One by one, key members of the production team left the set, leaving the two stars alone in a storm of their own making. The absence of authority only emboldened Kirk and Joc. Words became sharper, accusations more cutting. "You've ruined everything," Joc shouted, slamming her hand on a nearby table, sending papers and props flying. Kirk's retort was instant, his own hand swinging in a gesture of sheer frustration. "Ruined? You think I'm the only one to blame? Look at yourself. Look at all the manipulation you've done." As the fight continued, tears mixed with anger. Voices strained with every shout. The room felt like it was stretching to contain the sheer force of their emotions. The set, usually filled with laughter, scripted drama, and carefully orchestrated moments, was now a battlefield of raw, unscripted reality. Every camera angle, every soundbite would later be dissected by fans and media. Each clip a new headline, each expression a talking point. In the midst of the chaos, former cast members who had returned for the taping tried to mediate. "Enough. Stop," one cried, their voice barely cutting through the shouting. But their pleas were swallowed by the hurricane of anger. Kirk's friends shouted at Joc to back off, while Joc's supporters accused Kirk of escalating unnecessarily. Lines were drawn, alliances formed and broken within seconds, leaving everyone dizzy and unsure where loyalties lay. The clash had now escalated to a point where physical confrontation seemed imminent. Crew members held their breath as Kirk and Joc stood just feet apart, eyes locked in a stare that could pierce steel. One could almost hear the collective heartbeat of the entire set, pounding in anticipation of what might come next. The fans were watching online, live, unable to look away. Tweets flooding in with disbelief. "This is insane. I can't believe what I'm seeing. The producers actually left." The digital crowd became as involved as the people physically present, turning a studio clash into a global spectacle. As the minutes dragged on, the shouting slowed slightly, but the tension never subsided. Every word was measured, every gesture loaded with past grievances. Joc's voice, now a mix of tears and rage, echoed, "Do you even care about anyone here? About the fans? About your family?" Kirk's response was a raw guttural shout. "I care about surviving this, and surviving you." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication, as though admitting some secret that had been festering for weeks. It was clear that this was more than a fight over a scene, a storyline, or ratings. This was a battle of ego, history, and raw human emotion. And in this war, there were no winners yet. As the chaos unfolded, even the set decorators, camera assistants, and background cast became unwilling participants. Caught in the whirlpool of fury and heartbreak, props were knocked over, cameras jostled, and every sound shouts, sobs, and gasps melded into a cacophony that no sound engineer could have anticipated. Somewhere in the middle of the chaos, Kirk's brother tried to step in. "Stop this right now. This is insane." But Joc's friends intervened, surrounding her like a protective barrier. The room became a maze of human emotion, every person caught in the tug-of-war between two of reality TV's most volatile stars. And yet, even in the eye of the storm, brief moments of vulnerability appeared. Joc's shoulders shook as she tried to steady herself, tears streaking her makeup, her voice breaking. "I just want things to be normal again." Kirk's eyes softened for a fleeting second, a glimpse of the person behind the anger, but it vanished as quickly as it came. replaced by the fire of frustration and the need to assert dominance. This push and pull, this interplay of raw emotion, set the stage for an unfolding drama that would soon become legendary among fans and media alike. The conflict had reached a point of no return, and everyone present understood it. The room was charged with energy, danger, and unspoken questions. How far would this go? Who would be left standing? And what consequences would ripple out of this moment of explosive reality TV history? The tension, the chaos, the raw emotional display was all being captured, frame by frame, second by second. And somewhere, deep down, everyone knew that this moment would define the rest of the season, if not the entire show. Producers quitting, family divided, emotions running at full tilt. This was no ordinary episode. This was a seismic event in the reality TV universe. A clash so intense that even the most hardened crew members admitted they had never witnessed anything like it. And while Kirk and Joc squared off in the center of the set, the world watched, held captive by the spectacle, unable to look away, already anticipating the next explosive development that would inevitably follow. The room remained thick with tension, even after the initial shouting match had subsided, though the storm was far from over. Kirk and Joc paced like caged animals, eyes darting, hands clenched, each waiting for the other to make the next move. Crew members hovered at a safe distance, whispering updates to each other while desperately trying to keep the cameras rolling. The family members, frozen in a mix of shock and concern, exchanged silent glances, knowing that any sudden movement could trigger the next explosion. It wasn't just the shouting anymore. It had evolved into a war of wills, each participant trying to assert control over the narrative of their conflict. You think you can humiliate me in front of everyone and get away with it? Kirk's voice sliced through the thick air, trembling with a mixture of rage and hurt. Joc, refusing to be cowed, shot back, humiliate you? I'm just speaking the truth, something you clearly can't handle. The words carried the weight of weeks, if not months, of simmering resentment. Friends who had stayed close to the situation tried to intervene, positioning themselves strategically between the two, but their presence was barely noticed, overshadowed by the intensity radiating from Kirk and Joc. This wasn't a fight to be solved with reasoning. It was raw, emotional, primal, a collision of pride, past grievances, and personal insecurities. Social media, meanwhile, was exploding. Clips of the altercation, taken from every available angle, were shared, reshared, and dissected. Memes sprang up almost instantly, fans taking sides, debating who was at fault, speculating on what could have sparked such a violent confrontation. Hashtags continued to trend. Hashtag Kirkfees, JOC, hashtag Set Meltdown, hashtag Reality TV Chaos. The online crowd became part of the story, their collective outrage and curiosity amplifying the pressure inside the studio. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the producers who had walked off were scrambling to regain some semblance of control. Conference calls erupted with frantic voices. We need to get them under control before this spirals any further. One said, the crew is in shock, and the fans are already running wild online. If we don't act fast, the show is done. But with each passing minute, it became increasingly clear that traditional methods of conflict resolution would be useless here. This was no longer just about production. It was about survival, identity, and the desperate need to assert dominance in a highly volatile environment. The cast's friends and allies tried to calm things down, speaking in low, urgent tones, but the words were drowned out by the ongoing verbal onslaught. Every accusation was met with a sharper retort, every attempt at diplomacy rebuffed with renewed fury. Emotions ran high, leaving no room for reason. At one point, Joc's voice cracked as she accused Kirk of manipulating past events to make her appear unstable in front of the cameras. You've always done this. You twist everything to make me the bad guy, she shouted, tears streaking her face. Kirk's response was immediate and scathing. Twist everything. I've done nothing but react to your schemes. You think the fans don't see through you. The intensity of their exchange was unlike anything anyone had ever witnessed. The family, once close-knit and supportive, found themselves drawn into the conflict, choosing sides under duress. Some whispered encouragement to Joc, others whispered advice to Kirk. But every intervention only seemed to exacerbate the volatility. The room became a powder keg, each word a potential spark, each gesture a potential explosion. Physical confrontation seemed inevitable, yet there was a strange, almost theatrical, restraint and understanding that cameras were present and the world was watching. This awareness only added fuel to the fire. A tension between impulse and image that made every glance, every sigh, every muttered insult feel like a strategic move in a high-stakes chess game. The crew tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but props were knocked over, chairs scraped across the floor, and the sound of objects falling punctuated the verbal sparring like drum beats marking the cadence of chaos. Even background extras, who were usually invisible, found themselves accidentally caught in the crossfire, stepping back quickly, hands raised, eyes wide in fear and fascination. Kirk's allies, sensing that the situation could tilt against him, began whispering in his ear, advising on tactics, arguing for restraint, but he was barely listening. His attention was locked entirely on Joc, each syllable from her lips sharpening his anger, each tear fueling his frustration. Joc, meanwhile, had surrounded herself with supporters, creating an almost impenetrable emotional fortress. Every look, every gesture, was calculated to maintain her ground while simultaneously piercing Kirk's defenses. Their verbal volley became a storm, each sentence more heated than the last, each accusation more cutting, each reply more defiant. For a moment, there was silence, a brief, terrifying pause that left everyone holding their breath. Then Kirk, his voice low but intense, said, "You want to play this game? Fine, but know that I'm done holding back. Everyone is going to see the truth today." Joc's reply was instantaneous, equally sharp and chilling. "The truth? You mean your version of it? Keep dreaming, Kirk. This ends with me standing, not you." The atmosphere was electric, a charged mix of fear, anger, and anticipation. Every heartbeat in the room felt amplified, every glance magnified, every whispered word loaded with potential consequence. Even the cameras, trained to capture reality TV chaos, struggled to keep pace with the speed and intensity of the unfolding drama. At one point, a small scuffle over a misplaced prop nearly turned physical, with both Kirk and Joc lunging instinctively, restrained only by the quick reactions of nearby crew members. The sound of shouted warnings, gasps, and slammed hands filled the room, echoing through the studio in a way that made it feel alive, almost sentient, a participant in its own right. Fans watching online reacted in real time, posting reactions ranging from laughter to horror, from outrage to sympathy. Polls sprang up asking the world to choose sides, comment threads filled with detailed breakdowns of the altercation, theories about its causes, and predictions for what might happen next. The energy, both online and on set, became a feedback loop, each feeding the other, amplifying the drama beyond anyone's control. Somewhere in the chaos, Joc's family whispered frantic advice, trying to pull her back from the brink without pushing her further. Kirk's supporters did the same, creating a tangled web of intervention attempts, each with unpredictable consequences. The fight had evolved into a psychological battlefield, with everyone, friends, family, crew, and fans caught in the crossfire. By this point, the producers who had fled earlier were watching live feeds, panic written across their faces. "If we don't get in there soon, this could be the end of the show," one muttered to another. No one can predict how far they'll go. And yet, as the minutes dragged on, there was a sense of morbid fascination in the room. Even those not directly involved found themselves unable to look away, caught in the mesmerizing pull of raw human emotion exposed in its most extreme form. Kirk and Joc, in the center of the storm, continued their verbal duel, alternating between rage and brief, fleeting vulnerability. "I can't believe you," Joc whispered, shaking her head. "After everything, you still don't get it." Kirk's eyes flashed, a mixture of anger and pain. "Get it? I've been living this nightmare with you for months." It was a scene so intense, so raw, that even seasoned reality TV professionals admitted they had never witnessed anything comparable. Every word, every gesture, every glance would later be dissected, analyzed, and replayed countless times. And through it all, the world was watching, captivated, horrified, and unable to tear itself away from the drama unfolding in real time. The stakes had escalated beyond personal conflict. This was now a spectacle, a moment destined to define the season, the show, and perhaps the careers of those involved. The intensity showed no signs of relenting, promising that the next moves, whether of reconciliation, further confrontation, or total collapse, would be unforgettable. The fans, the crew, the family, they all waited, suspended in the tension of a storm that had no clear end, knowing that history was being made on that very set, frame by frame, scream by scream, and tear by tear. The tension refused to abate as the hours dragged on, and every attempt at mediation seemed only to inflame the situation further. Kirk, pacing like a predator, glared at Joc with a mixture of disbelief and fury, his words slicing the air with each heated accusation. "Do you even realize the damage you've caused? The lies, the schemes you've dragged everyone into your chaos?" Joc, unflinching and equally fierce, fired back. "Don't you dare pin this on me. You've been manipulating, scheming, twisting reality to your advantage since day one." The air felt electric, each word charged with the weight of betrayal and anger. Crew members, exhausted from trying to maintain control, whispered urgently to one another, anticipating the next eruption. Props were scattered from previous outbursts, chairs overturned, and even the lighting seemed to flicker as if reflecting the volatility of the moment. Family members, caught in a maelstrom of conflicting loyalties, tried to offer calm words, but the cacophony of accusations drowned them out. The emotional stakes were higher than ever, and no one could predict what would happen next. Joc's allies tried to form a protective barrier around her, but Kirk's supporters, unwilling to let the situation spiral further without defense, moved in closer, creating a tense standoff reminiscent of a battlefield. Every glance, every subtle gesture carried the potential to ignite another eruption. Social media mirrored the chaos in real time, clips of Kirk's sharp retorts, Joc's defiant stances, and the scattered debris of the set circulated wildly, fans debating passionately over who was at fault. Hashtags multiplied like wildfire. Hashtag set meltdown. Hashtag Kirk vs JOC. Hashtag reality TV explosion. Fans speculated about past events, analyzing every frame for hidden meaning, adding fuel to the fire that raged both on-screen and online. Inside the studio, even the most experienced producers began to panic. "We can't control this," one whispered, watching monitors that captured every furious exchange. "If this keeps escalating, the show is done for. The fans won't forgive this, and neither will the network." Meanwhile, Kirk's voice cut through the room, low and intense, dripping with anger and frustration. "You think you can keep playing games, Joc? Everyone is going to see exactly who you are today." Joc, her voice trembling with fury and pain, snapped back. "You're delusional if you think you're the hero here. Face the mirror, Kirk. Face what you've become." Their verbal assault was relentless, echoing off the walls, mingling with the gasps, shouts, and frantic attempts at intervention. Crew members, who had been trained to handle chaos, found themselves overwhelmed, ducking and weaving through the storm of raw emotion and scattered set pieces. The clash between Kirk and Joc wasn't merely about their differences. It had become an exhibition of personal history, grudges, and psychological warfare. Each word carefully, or perhaps instinctively, aimed to wound and dominate. At one point, Joc's frustration boiled over as she slammed her hand on the studio table, sending scripts and props crashing to the floor. "Stop trying to control everything, Kirk. You don't get to dictate my life." Kirk, visibly shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief, responded with a forceful gesture, his voice rising above the ambient chaos. "Control. You've been manipulating everyone around you for months, Joc. I'm done pretending otherwise." The room seemed to shrink under the weight of their combined fury, every corner humming with tension. Friends and family members who had once tried to mediate now spoke in hushed, urgent tones, forming quick alliances to stabilize the situation, though each intervention risked further escalation. Even background extras, who usually remained unnoticed, were drawn into the maelstrom, instinctively moving to avoid the crossfire, their fear evident in wide eyes and shallow breaths. As the confrontation raged on, fleeting moments of vulnerability punctuated the chaos. Joc's shoulders shook with suppressed tears, her voice breaking mid-sentence. I just want peace," she whispered, though the words were nearly lost in the roar of accusations. Kirk, for a brief moment, seemed to soften, the fire in his eyes flickering. "Peace? After everything, you expect me to believe that?" But the fleeting softness vanished as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by renewed intensity, a primal need to assert dominance and protect ego. The drama escalated further when past grievances surfaced. Kirk accused Joc of orchestrating events behind the scenes to make him look unstable, while Joc countered with claims of manipulation and deceit on his part. Their voices intertwined with the ambient chaos, creating a storm that left no one untouched. Crew members attempted to intervene physically this time, placing themselves between the two, but even their presence seemed to inflame the conflict, as though the physical barrier underscored the intensity rather than diffused it. Fans watching online were glued to every frame, commenting in real time. Clips of the verbal onslaught went viral. Reactions ranged from shock to amusement, from outrage to fascination. Polls and discussions erupted across platforms, each fan theorizing who had escalated the fight first, who was justified, and who would ultimately come out on top. Somewhere in the midst of the storm, a brief lull appeared, a silent pause, heavy with anticipation. Both Kirk and Joc seemed to catch their breath, the tension so thick it could almost be sliced with a knife. For a moment, everyone in the room held their breath, wondering if this pause would signal resolution or just the calm before an even more explosive wave of conflict. Then, like a lightning strike, Joc broke the silence. "You've lied for the last time, Kirk. Everyone is going to see what kind of person you really are." Her words were sharp, precise, and calculated to wound, revealing a depth of planning and intent that went beyond spontaneous anger. Kirk's response was instantaneous, matching her intensity. "And you think you're innocent? Everyone will know your schemes, your manipulation. The world will see both of us for who we truly are." The verbal clash intensified, each word a dagger, each accusation a challenge. The family members, once attempting to remain neutral, were now forced to pick sides, their loyalties tested in real time under immense pressure. Crew members, exhausted but determined, tried to keep filming, capturing the raw energy of a storm that could not be tamed. Every shout, every gesture, every trembling word was a piece of reality TV history being forged live. Producers, watching from the sidelines, whispered frantic instructions to assistant directors, desperate to prevent complete chaos. "We need to get someone in there. This could destroy the entire season." But the storm had its own rhythm, and no outside force could contain it. The physical set became collateral damage in the emotional war tables knocked over. Chairs scraped across the floor, papers and props scattered like debris from a tempest. Even the lighting crew struggled to keep equipment safe while maintaining filming continuity. Amidst this whirlwind, brief but potent glimpses of vulnerability emerged. Joc, tears streaking her face, whispered, "I didn't want it to come to this," while Kirk's expression flickered with a mixture of frustration, regret, and unresolved anger. The emotional complexity made the confrontation mesmerizing, unpredictable, and utterly captivating to those present and the millions watching online. As minutes turned to hours, the intensity remained relentless. Both Kirk and Joc had exhausted conventional means of communication. Every word was loaded with history, every glance a trigger. Crew members alternated between intervention attempts and cautious observation, unsure whether to risk further escalation or to allow the moment to play out in all its raw, unscripted reality. Social media continued to mirror the chaos, with clips, GIFs, and commentary circulating at lightning speed. Fans debated endlessly, dissecting motives, body language, and emotional cues. Predictions about the show's future, potential reconciliations, or catastrophic fallout filled every feed. And still, Kirk and Joc remained locked in their emotional battle. Each word a strike, each gesture a calculated move in a high-stakes drama that would be talked about for months to come. The confrontation showed no signs of easing, and the energy in the studio had become almost unbearable. Kirk, his chest heaving, moved deliberately closer to Joc, eyes narrowing with intensity. "Do you have any idea how much damage you've caused, Joc?" he demanded, voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. Joc, standing her ground, responded without hesitation. "Damage? Look in the mirror, Kirk. You've been orchestrating this disaster just as much as I have." The words cut through the room like a blade, and even the crew instinctively recoiled, sensing that the emotional stakes had reached a new, perilous height. Friends and family members who had once tried to mediate were now reduced to silent witnesses, watching the fiery exchange with wide eyes, aware that the outcome could irreparably change the dynamic on set. Props were scattered across the floor from previous eruption script pages, chairs, and lighting equipment serving as physical evidence of the chaos that had consumed the space. Every glance, every word, every gesture was a powder keg ready to ignite another explosion. Kirk's allies, sensing that the balance of power was shifting, leaned in, whispering warnings and tactical advice, attempting to protect him from further verbal assault. Joc's supporters mirrored the effort, forming a protective circle around her, ready to intervene should the confrontation escalate physically. The room was a living entity of tension, a web of human emotions stretched taut by weeks of unspoken grievances finally unleashed in full view of cameras and crew. Social media attention intensified as the conflict unfolded. Clips of Joc slamming her hands on tables, Kirk pacing with clenched fists, and both stars shouting accusations flew across platforms, trending within minutes. Fans debated furiously, some expressing shock and horror, others reveling in the spectacle, dissecting every movement, every glance, and theorizing endlessly about what had triggered this unprecedented clash. The producers who had previously fled were now monitoring live feeds with growing concern. "We might have underestimated the level of intensity," one whispered, panic evident in their tone. "If this escalates further, it could completely derail the show." the fight had evolved beyond a simple argument. It had become a complex psychological battlefield. Each participant exploiting weaknesses, testing loyalties, and revealing raw vulnerabilities in real time. Joc's voice, strained and sharp, cut through the tension. "You think I'm the villain here? You're just as guilty, Kirk. Every manipulation, every lie you've dragged everyone into your mess." Kirk's face contorted with a mixture of frustration and disbelief. "Guilty? I've only reacted to your schemes. Do you even realize how toxic this has become?" The verbal duel intensified, echoing through the studio like thunder. Each word carrying historical weight, each accusation a reminder of long-held resentments. Family members, caught in the crossfire, exchanged worried glances, knowing that involvement could either calm the storm or worsen it. The subtle dynamics of loyalty and fear created a complex emotional battlefield, where every action carried consequences. Crew members, though skilled in handling unpredictable reality TV scenarios, struggled to maintain filming continuity. Cameras tilted, hands scrambled to adjust lighting, and microphones picked up every expletive, scream, and tearful whisper. The physical environment had become secondary to the emotional hurricane, a mere backdrop to the ongoing conflict that threatened to consume everyone present. At one point, Joc's voice broke with a mixture of fury and vulnerability. "I just wanted things to be normal. Why can't you see that?" Her words, brief and fragile, exposed the depth of her frustration and the human cost of the relentless confrontation. Kirk's expression softened momentarily, a flash of regret passing through his eyes. "Normal?" he muttered under his breath, though the intensity returned almost immediately, replaced by the fire of unresolved anger. The two stars continued their battle of words, the room vibrating with tension, as if the walls themselves absorbed the energy, reflecting it back in heightened intensity. Every shout, every sob, every pointed finger became a piece of the unfolding spectacle, a live chronicle of human emotion pushed to its limits. Friends and family members tried new strategies to calm the situation, some taking a step back to avoid escalating it further, others intervening directly, their voices sharp but measured. Each intervention carried risk, potentially igniting further conflict or gently guiding the participants toward a temporary truce. The back and forth between Kirk and Joc had become relentless, alternating between anger, frustration, and rare glimpses of vulnerability. Each exchange was layered with past grievances, hidden motives, and raw emotional intensity that made even seasoned observers gasp. The crew, exhausted but committed, continued capturing every angle, aware that this was an unprecedented moment in reality TV history. Online, fan engagement reached a fever pitch, hashtags proliferated, commentary flooded in, and fan theories exploded across multiple platforms. Every social media interaction fueled the on-set tension, creating a feedback loop where digital and physical drama fed one another. As the confrontation wore on, fleeting moments of emotional exposure punctuated the chaos. Joc's shoulders trembled, tears forming at the corners of her eyes as she whispered, "I didn't want it to come to this." Kirk's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, acknowledging the vulnerability, before hardening again, returning to the defensive, confrontational posture that had dominated the conflict. Past grievances resurfaced, accusations flying like daggers in all directions. Kirk accused Joc of behind-the-scenes manipulation to portray him as unstable, while Joc countered with claims of his own deceit and scheming. The emotional intensity reached a crescendo, the air thick with anticipation and fear. Crew members intervened physically when a near lunge over a fallen prop almost escalated into physical contact, their efforts a reminder of the fragile line between chaos and catastrophe. The set, now a chaotic tableau of overturned furniture, scattered papers, and tense faces, mirrored the emotional wreckage of the confrontation. Fans online continued to dissect every detail, the drama becoming a global spectacle as reactions, memes, and debates surged. In the eye of the storm, Kirk and Joc stood their ground, locked in a battle of words, emotions, and history. Every accusation, every defensive retort, every glare carried weight, far beyond the immediate moment. Family members, crew, and fans watched with bated breath, aware that the unfolding events would leave lasting scars, shape narratives, and potentially redefine the show's future. And yet, amid the chaos, there remained a sense of inevitability. Each word, each gesture, each tear and shout was building toward an outcome none could fully predict. An emotional climax that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. The energy in the room was electric, almost tangible, as if the studio itself had become a living participant in the drama. Reflecting, amplifying, and responding to the raw intensity of human emotion on display. Every frame captured was a testament to the collision of pride, resentment, love, and furious storm that promised to leave no one unchanged. Kirk and Joc, at the center of it all, seemed to feed off the energy. Their confrontation a chaotic dance of anger, vulnerability, and desperate need for acknowledgement. The clash had reached a point where resolution seemed impossible, yet the story was far from over. Every observer, every fan, every crew member could feel it. The moment would define not just the episode, but the trajectory of the show and the personal legacies of those involved. The room's atmosphere grew even more suffocating as the verbal battle escalated to new heights. Kirk, his face flushed and his fists clenching involuntarily, advanced toward Joc, eyes locked with a ferocity that made everyone around hold their breath. "You don't understand," he barked, his voice resonating like thunder. "Everything I've done, every decision, was to protect this family, and you turn it all into a spectacle." Joc, refusing to back down, tilted her chin defiantly, her voice dripping with venom and hurt. "Protect, is that what you call it? Manipulating everyone behind the scenes while making yourself the victim? Spare me, Kirk." The clash of their words was deafening, amplified by the tight, charged space, each syllable loaded with months of built-up resentment and personal history. Friends and family hovered at a cautious distance, knowing that any misstep could ignite a physical confrontation. Crew members scrambled to maintain order, holding cameras at awkward angles, ducking flying objects, and whispering frantic instructions into earpieces. Tension crackled like static electricity in the air, thick and almost tangible, making it impossible to focus on anything other than the two central figures locked in relentless combat. Joc's supporters attempted to intercede, their voices calm but firm, hoping to create a buffer that might prevent another outburst. Kirk's allies, sensing that the fight could tip the balance of influence, pressed closer, their whispers fueling his determination and anger. Every movement, every glance, every spoken word was a calculated weapon, wielded with precision in a battlefield of emotions and power dynamics. Social media, as if on cue, mirrored the chaos, exploding with live reactions. Clips of Joc's furious gesturing, Kirk's pacing, and moments of raw vulnerability circulated widely, creating trending hashtags and igniting impassioned debates among fans. Hashtag #KirkVisJoc, hashtag #SetMeltdown, and hashtag reality TV war began dominating conversations. As viewers dissected every glance, every phrase, and every dramatic pause, producers, watching from multiple monitors, exchanged increasingly panicked glances. "We may have underestimated the intensity," one murmured, eyes glued to the live feed. "This could destroy the season if it escalates any further." Yet, even their interventions seemed futile. The confrontation had transcended normal conflict. It was no longer about reality TV scripts, production schedules, or ratings. It had become a visceral, psychological showdown where every word cut deeper than the last. Joc's tone shifted suddenly, her fury giving way to tremulous vulnerability. "I trusted you, Kirk," she whispered, voice breaking mid-sentence, "and you turned everything upside down. How could you?" For a brief, almost imperceptible moment, Kirk's gaze softened, but it was quickly replaced by the defensive armor of anger. "Trust," he spat, voice low and guttural. "Do you even remember what that means? I've been nothing but honest with you." The verbal storm resumed, heavier, sharper, and more relentless than before, echoing across the studio, bouncing off walls, and drawing in every observer. Family members, forced to navigate this minefield of emotion, attempted to calm the situation. Some whispered in Joc's ear, others pulled Kirk aside, trying to diffuse the tension without triggering further escalation. But with each attempt, the fight morphed and twisted, evolving beyond simple reconciliation. Physical gestures began to punctuate their exchanges. Joc slammed a hand against the table, sending papers flying, while Kirk gestured aggressively, knocking over a chair in his frustration. Crew members jumped into action, trying to prevent injury while keeping the cameras rolling to capture the drama. That had become the focal point of the episode. The intensity reached fever pitch when Joc accused Kirk of deliberately sabotaging the show to make her appear unstable. "You've been planning this for months. You wanted them all to see me like this," she screamed, her face contorted with anger and hurt. Kirk's response was immediate and vicious. "Planning this? Don't flatter yourself. I've only been trying to survive your schemes." The room seemed to vibrate with the tension, the verbal blows landing with the force of physical strikes. Fans online dissected every second, replaying clips, creating reaction videos, and debating endlessly. The spectacle had become a global event, trending worldwide as viewers argued over the causes, consequences, and culpability. Amidst the chaos, fleeting moments of unexpected vulnerability appeared. Joc's voice quivered as she whispered, "I just wanted things to be normal." Her words, so fragile amidst the storm, hinted at the emotional toll exacted by weeks of conflict. Kirk's expression softened momentarily, his chest heaving, before returning to the relentless intensity that had dominated the room for hours. The verbal onslaught continued, each statement more calculated, more cutting, more theatrical than the last. Both participants seemed to feed off the energy, unable to stop, locked in a relentless cycle of accusation, defense, and exposure. The set, now in disarray, reflected the emotional wreckage of the confrontation. Chairs toppled, scripts scattered, lighting equipment adjusted hastily to prevent accidents. Yet every element seemed secondary to the human storm unfolding at its center. Crew members, seasoned in managing chaos, admitted in hushed conversations that they had never witnessed anything of this magnitude. Even the most minor gestures, the smallest expressions, carried weight, triggering reactions from the opposing side. Social media continued to amplify the spectacle, spreading clips of raised voices, shouted accusations, and near confrontations. Memes and polls flourished, dividing fans and fueling the narrative. As viewers speculated on alliances, betrayals, and possible outcomes, every interaction on set became a data point in the larger story, feeding both online audiences and the emotional reality of those present. Joc's supporters and Kirk's allies attempted to interject, to reason, to calm, but every action seemed to propel the drama further, escalating stakes beyond comprehension. Their voices, often drowned out by the primary duel, nonetheless contributed to the intricate web of tension that had enveloped the studio. At one point, the confrontation became so charged that Kirk and Joc inadvertently collided, their bodies brushing as they turned in opposite directions, both reacting instantly with defensive postures. Crew members jumped to intervene, placing themselves strategically to prevent escalation. The intensity, however, was not merely physical. It was psychological, emotional, and deeply personal, weaving together a narrative of conflict that captivated everyone involved. As the hours dragged on, moments of temporary calm were punctuated by renewed eruptions, each wave more intense than the last. The room's atmosphere became almost surreal, with time feeling suspended in the eye of a storm that refused to pass. The cameras captured it all, and online, fans remained riveted, commenting, debating, and predicting the next move. Kirk and Joc, despite exhaustion, continued their relentless duel, trading accusations, exposing vulnerabilities, and asserting dominance. The energy was cyclical, a feedback loop where anger fueled exposure. Exposure fueled counterattack, and counterattack fueled even more intensity. Observers could sense that the climax was approaching, though its form, whether reconciliation, further collapse, or an unforeseen twist, remained unpredictable. Family, friends, crew, and viewers alike were united in anticipation, drawn into the vortex of emotion, manipulation, and raw human drama. Every movement, glance, and word carried weight, shaping not only the immediate outcome but the narrative legacy of this unprecedented confrontation. The studio, the set, the cameras, and the audience had become complicit witnesses to a spectacle that transcended ordinary reality TV. A live chronicle of human emotion stretched to its absolute limit, where every heart in the room beat in tandem with the tension that refused to dissipate. The storm of tension continued to rage unchecked, consuming every corner of the studio as Kirk and Joc remained locked in their verbal battlefield, their voices oscillating between piercing rage and heart-wrenching vulnerability, creating an atmosphere so thick it seemed to bend the air itself, and no one around could find the courage or clarity to intervene effectively. While crew members ducked behind cameras and overturned chairs, whispering frantic, panicked instructions into earpieces, trying to maintain filming continuity even as the set itself seemed to rebel against the chaos. The lights flickering sporadically, reflecting the raw, unfiltered energy of the confrontation, and every sound, the scraping of chairs, the crash of props, the rapid exchange of shouted accusations, echoed through the space like a symphony of chaos meticulously orchestrated by the unrelenting storm of emotion at its center, where Kirk, his chest heaving and veins pulsing with anger, advanced and retreated in a hypnotic rhythm of aggression and defense. His eyes locked on Joc with an intensity that made onlookers gasp and recoil, while Joc, standing tall with defiance, masking the trembling in her hands, matched his every movement with precise, sharp words that cut like knives. each syllable carrying the weight of past grievances and meticulously preserved slights. And together, they formed a cyclone of emotion that drew in family, friends, crew, and even background extras, their own senses flooded with adrenaline and fear as they navigated the volatile emotional landscape that had transformed the studio into something unrecognizable, a war zone of the heart and mind, where alliances shifted moment by moment and trust had become a fragile, nearly non-existent commodity. And yet, despite the chaos, there were moments of unbearable vulnerability, brief flashes when Joc's voice quivered as she whispered of betrayal and exhaustion, and Kirk's eyes softened for a fraction of a second, the armor of anger cracking to reveal a man who had also been wounded, creating a complex interplay of aggression and fragile humanity that made the entire scenario mesmerizing, almost hypnotic to anyone watching, whether in the studio or through the lens of social media, where clips were being uploaded and dissected in real time, sparking furious debates, countless memes, and trending hashtags, and fans around the world, glued to screens, became unwitting participants in the drama, offering their own judgments, predictions, and sympathies while amplifying the pressure within the studio, feeding the feedback loop that drove Kirk and Joc to even greater extremes. And as hours stretched into a blur of shouted accusations, slammed furniture, and scattered debris, the psychological intensity escalated further, with Kirk accusing Joc of hidden manipulation and Joc retorting with claims of deceit and sabotage, their exchanges laden with personal history, public embarrassment, and the desperate need to assert control, while family members whispered urgent advice to one side or the other, torn between intervention and avoidance, fearful that any action might exacerbate the storm. And the crew, running on adrenaline and sheer determination, maneuvered between capturing every angle and preventing disaster, their movements frantic yet necessary as the set itself bore the scars of the emotional hurricane. From toppled chairs to scattered papers and broken props, all silent witnesses to the relentless human drama. And yet, even amidst the chaos, moments of human fragility continued to pierce the tension, Joc's voice breaking as she whispered of wanting peace, Kirk's expression flickering with fleeting remorse before hardening again into defiance, the cycle repeating endlessly as the confrontation consumed every thought and movement, the room a crucible where pride, resentment, and vulnerability fused into an almost tangible energy that seemed to pulse with each shouted word, each accusatory glance, and each defensive gesture, while online, fans dissected every nuance, replayed every frame, and debated with fervor who bore the greater guilt, whose actions were justified, and what the inevitable consequences might be, all while hashtags trended globally, creating a sense of shared, collective obsession that only intensified the pressure on Kirk and Joc, turning a personal feud into a worldwide spectacle. And as the confrontation dragged on, it became clear that the outcome was not just about winning an argument or asserting dominance, but about survival in a complex web of relationships, reputations, and emotional stakes, each moment building inexorably toward an unknown but inevitable climax, where every misstep, every word, and every flicker of emotion would carry consequences that would reverberate long after the cameras stopped rolling, leaving a legacy of chaos, heartbreak, and unforgettable drama in their wake. And in the eye of this relentless storm, Kirk and Joc continued their duel, a vortex of fury, fear, and fragile humanity that drew everyone present into its orbit, from friends and family to crew and fans, who all felt the intensity as if it were their own, creating a shared experience of raw, unfiltered reality TV spectacle, while the studio itself, battered by the emotional tempest, seemed to hold its breath, anticipating the next eruption, the next confession, the next betrayal. As the story unfolded with no clear resolution, only the promise of further revelation, further confrontation, and the inexorable march of chaos that had come to define every moment of that unforgettable, storm-laden day. And as Kirk and Joc continued to circle each other, their voices rising and falling like waves crashing against a cliff, the emotional and psychological tension remained unbroken, a living, breathing entity in itself, sustaining the drama, magnifying the stakes, and ensuring that every heartbeat, every glance, and every word became part of a narrative that was as captivating as it was destructive, leaving no participant untouched and no observer able to look away, caught in the mesmerizing, terrifying spectacle of raw human emotion pushed to its absolute limits. The chaos showed no sign of relenting as Kirk and Joc's confrontation escalated into an all-encompassing storm that consumed every inch of the studio, the air thick with tension so palpable it pressed down on everyone in the room, and every shout, accusation, and trembling word seemed to reverberate infinitely, bouncing off walls and cameras, creating a cacophony that blended fury, fear, and fragile vulnerability into a single, overwhelming force, with Kirk veins throbbing and chest heaving, lunging verbally and gesturally, pointing fingers and pacing like a caged animal desperate to assert dominance, while Joc, equally unyielding, matched his intensity with razor-sharp retorts, her voice a mixture of anger, disbelief, and raw searing hurt. And the two of them became a whirlwind, pulling family members, friends, and crew into a vortex of emotional gravity that left no one untouched, as former mediators found themselves frozen in place, unsure whether intervention would escalate or temporarily pacify the storm, while the set itself bore the scars of this relentless confrontation, with chairs overturned, props scattered, lighting equipment adjusted hastily to prevent accidents, and papers fluttering across the floor like leaves in a tempest. Yet these material consequences paled in comparison to the psychological and emotional wreckage that accumulated with every verbal strike, every tearful whisper, and every defiant glare exchanged between Kirk and Joc, whose personal histories, grudges, and hidden resentments poured forth in torrents, creating a live theater of tension that rivaled any scripted drama. And as the minutes bled into hours, moments of vulnerability punctuated the fury, with Joc's voice cracking as she whispered pleas for understanding and peace, and Kirk's gaze softening momentarily before hardening again into defensive intensity, the oscillation between rage and fragile humanity mesmerizing to onlookers and fans alike, who watched with bated breath through the lenses of cameras and screens, their own emotions ensnared by the spectacle, sparking viral social media debates, trending hashtags, and endless speculation, while crew members scrambled to capture every angle, adjust lighting, and protect equipment, navigating the volatile set with precision born of necessity, their movements a delicate choreography between safety and documentation. And yet, despite the meticulous efforts, the human element proved uncontrollable, as every glance, gesture, and word seemed preordained to provoke a reaction, a counterattack, or an emotional fracture, and Kirk, in a surge of desperation and anger, accused Joc of calculated manipulation behind the scenes, of orchestrating events to undermine him publicly, while Joc, her own fury barely contained, countered with charges of deceit, emotional exploitation, and betrayal, their verbal volleying forming a relentless spiral where offense and defense blurred into one continuous, almost ritualistic exchange, and the energy in the room became so thick it was almost tangible, a living force that moved with the ebb and flow of their emotions, latching onto anyone nearby and drawing them into its orbit, making family members hyperaware of every word and glance, forcing crew members to respond instinctively to prevent escalation, and compelling fans online to dissect, debate, and replay every moment, turning the private chaos into a global spectacle, where reactions, theories, and judgments fueled the storm further, creating a feedback loop of intensity that fed Kirk and Joc's confrontation, amplifying every emotional spike and creating an atmosphere that seemed both surreal and hyperreal, a perfect storm of human behavior on display, unscripted yet eerily theatrical, where the lines between performance and authentic reaction blurred beyond recognition. And as the confrontation deepened, fleeting moments of fragility emerged, Joc's shoulders trembling, tears forming despite her defiance, Kirk's expression softening with fleeting recognition of shared pain, only to snap back into the cycle of anger and defense, a dynamic that made every observer, whether in the studio or online, acutely aware of the precariousness of the situation, the drama so magnetic that no one could look away, and the intensity was compounded by the interplay of external pressures, producers whispering frantic instructions, social media exploding with live reactions, friends and family attempting cautious interventions, and the realization that this confrontation could alter reputations, careers, and personal relationships irreversibly, as the verbal warfare escalated into a rhythm of accusation, confession, defense, and exposure, punctuated by gestures of frustration, slamming of props, and trembling whispers that conveyed raw emotion in its most unfiltered form, while the set became a physical manifestation of the turmoil, debris scattered like remnants of a battle, lighting flickering as if responding to the emotional electricity in the air, and the cameras captured it all with relentless precision, preserving each nuance, each microexpression, each subtle shift in tone that spoke volumes about the psychological stakes at play. And as the hours stretched endlessly, Kirk and Joc became almost mythic in their presence, embodiments of unrelenting conflict, human complexity, and emotional extremity, the center of a storm that threatened to engulf everyone present, their energy both destructive and captivating, the room vibrating with a tension that refused to dissipate. And yet, amid the chaos, there remained a strange, fragile beauty in the display of raw human emotion, the interplay of rage and vulnerability, the intricate dance of accusation and defense, the mesmerizing spectacle that kept every eye fixed on them, every mind analyzing motives, and every heart racing with anticipation of what would come next, for in that room, on that set, the ordinary rules of reality had been suspended, replaced by a relentless, breathtaking demonstration of how deeply personal histories, pride, and human vulnerability could collide in a perfect storm of drama. And as Kirk and Joc continued their verbal and emotional duel, circling, striking, defending, revealing, and exposing, it became clear that the confrontation would leave an indelible mark, not just on the studio, the show, or the individuals involved, but on every observer, every fan, every participant who had been drawn into the orbit of this relentless, consuming, and unforgettable human tempest. The intensity of the confrontation showed no signs of abating, spiraling further into a maelstrom of raw emotion, as Kirk and Joc's verbal war evolved into something almost elemental, a collision of pride, resentment, and unspoken grievances that had been simmering beneath the surface for months, their voices oscillating between thunderous rage and broken vulnerability, each word landing like a hammer strike that reverberated through the room, shaking the very air and leaving crew members, family, and friends suspended in a state of collective tension, every individual acutely aware that the next exchange could tip the balance into irreparable chaos. And as Kirk's eyes narrowed with unrelenting fury, Joc's jaw tightened in defiance, the two of them circling one another like predators caught in a gravitational pull of mutual contempt and unresolved history, while the set, littered with the detritus of previous eruptions, overturned chairs, scattered scripts, broken props, and bent lighting stands served as a visual testament to the relentless, escalating storm, a chaotic reflection of the psychological and emotional warfare that consumed every participant. And yet amidst the screaming and just moments of unexpected fragility punctuated the tumult, Joc's voice cracking as she whispered of betrayal and exhaustion, her eyes glistening with tears that she fought desperately to contain, while Kirk, chest heaving, gave a fleeting glimpse of remorse, a softening of expression that vanished almost instantly, replaced by defensive armor as he launched into another series of accusations. The verbal blows exchanged with relentless precision, each one steeped in personal history, hidden motives, and the raw need for dominance and acknowledgement. As friends and family members attempted interventions, their voices measured but often drowned out by the torrent of anger, while crew members moved with acute awareness, cameras rolling, capturing every nuance, every flicker of emotion, knowing they were witnessing a spectacle that defied expectation, that transcended ordinary reality television drama, becoming a psychological case study in conflict, manipulation, and human vulnerability. And online, social media exploded in real time. Clips of Kirk pacing, Joc slamming her hands on tables, shouted retorts, and tearful confessions spread like wildfire, hashtags trending globally, fan theories proliferating, arguments erupting across comment sections, all feeding into a feedback loop that seemed to fuel the confrontation, intensifying the energy in the studio as both parties, aware of their audience, performed and reacted in equal measure, their actions choreographed by a mixture of instinct, pride, and the unfiltered flow of emotion. And as the hours dragged on, the confrontations became more layered, the accusations more pointed, the vulnerabilities more exposed, with Kirk claiming sabotage, manipulation, and orchestrated betrayals, and Joc countering with evidence of deceit, emotional exploitation, and years of undermined trust, each exchange layered with complex subtext, each gesture amplified by the psychological weight of the history between them. And as the verbal volley continued, small time clips of Kirk pacing, Joc slamming her hands on tables, shouted retorts, and tearful confessions spread like wildfire, hashtags trending globally, fan theories proliferating, arguments erupting across comment sections, all feeding into a feedback loop that seemed to fuel the confrontation, intensifying the energy in the studio as both parties, aware of their audience, performed and reacted in equal measure, their actions choreographed by a mixture of instinct, pride, and the unfiltered flow of emotion. And as the hours dragged on, the confrontations became more layered, the accusations more pointed, the vulnerabilities more exposed, with Kirk claiming sabotage, manipulation, and orchestrated betrayals, and Joc countering with evidence of deceit, emotional exploitation, and years of undermined trust, each exchange layered with complex subtext, each gesture amplified by the psychological weight of the history between them. And as the verbal volley continued, small physical movements punctuated the dialogue. Chairs tipped, props rattled, cameras jogged. Crew members jumped to intervene, all creating a living tableau of chaos, intensity, and unrelenting drama, the set itself becoming an extension of the human conflict, a stage on which the full spectrum of emotion from rage to despair, from defiance to desperation played out with relentless force. And yet within the storm, fleeting glimpses of shared history, of vulnerability, and of humanity emerged. Joc's voice softening as she confessed moments of fear and exhaustion, Kirk's expressions betraying fleeting remorse before snapping back into defensive aggression, creating a hypnotic oscillation of emotion that held every observer captive. Every heartbeat in the room synced to the rhythm of the confrontation, while online audiences dissected each frame, each movement, each glance, forming a digital echo of the emotional chaos, their collective reactions fueling further intensity. Trending hashtags like hashtag Kirk vs JOC, hashtag reality TV meltdown, and hashtag studio storm dominating discussions, memes, and reaction videos proliferating, turning the private spectacle into a worldwide phenomenon. And yet the human toll on those present was undeniable, with friends and family navigating a delicate balance of loyalty, fear, and desperation, crew members working tirelessly to maintain safety while capturing every angle, and Kirk and Joc themselves caught in a loop where anger, vulnerability, and performative energy fed off one another, the confrontation becoming almost ritualistic in its persistence, with each word and gesture carrying historical, emotional, and psychological weight. Their interactions, a complex dance of accusation, exposure, and defense, leaving no room for detachment, no space for neutrality, and no escape from the relentless intensity. As the day wore on, and the confrontation showed no sign of resolution, the storm of human emotion continued to surge, a living, breathing entity that dominated the studio, reshaping reality itself in its wake. And in the eye of this ceaseless hurricane, Kirk and Joc remained locked in their battle, exchanging verbal blows, revealing hidden vulnerabilities, asserting dominance, and exposing truths that had lain dormant, creating a spectacle that was as mesmerizing as it was terrifying, as chaotic as it was intimate, a full display of raw human emotion stretched to its absolute limits, while everyone present, family, friends, crew, and the global audience remained caught in the orbit of the conflict, unable to look away, fully aware that the climax, when it came, would redefine not just the outcome of the confrontation, but the relationships, reputations, and legacies of everyone involved, leaving a mark that would linger long after the cameras stopped rolling. The echoes of this extraordinary storm resonating through hearts, minds, and social feeds, a testament to the destructive, compelling, and unforgettable power of raw human drama unleashed without restraint, a moment in time that would be dissected, debated, and remembered, for the emotional intensity, the spectacle of confrontation, and the sheer unpredictability of Kirk and Joc's storm had created a reality TV event that transcended ordinary boundaries, an unrelenting display of pride, vulnerability, anger, and fragile humanity that held every participant and observer in a state of rapt attention, a narrative of chaos and emotion that continued to surge, each second building upon the last, the momentum unstoppable, the outcome uncertain, and yet the story, rich in its complexity, relentless in its tension, and overwhelming in its psychological and emotional depth, rolled on, unstoppable, uncontained, and utterly mesmerizing, an unparalleled chronicle of conflict, passion, and human extremity captured in real time, as Kirk and Joc, at the heart of the storm, remained locked in their unyielding duel, their words, gestures, and emotions cascading endlessly, defining the day, the set, and the very fabric of the unfolding reality they had created, leaving nothing untouched, no observer unmoved, and no heart untouched by the relentless spectacle of raw, unfiltered, unforgettable human drama. The emotional hurricane showed no signs of abating as Kirk and Joc's confrontation intensified, the studio air charged with a near-tangible electricity that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their escalating voices, every word and gesture a weapon in a battle that had long since surpassed ordinary argument, morphing into a full-blown psychological siege where pride, resentment, betrayal, and raw vulnerability collided with breathtaking intensity, and the crew, already exhausted from hours of frantic filming and crisis management, moved with painstaking precision to capture every angle while simultaneously attempting to prevent physical escalation, dodging flying props and overturned chairs as the two central figures exchanged verbal volleys that cut deeper than any physical blow, the atmosphere so dense that it seemed to weigh down on the observers. friends, family, and background staff alike, all of whom were caught in a collective state of anxious anticipation, acutely aware that the next word or movement could ignite further chaos or perhaps, impossibly, trigger a moment of fragile reconciliation, while online audiences, sensing the magnitude of the confrontation, erupted across multiple platforms. Clips of Kirk's pacing, Joc's furious gesturing, and heated accusations spreading like wildfire, hashtags trending globally, fans dissecting each inflection, pause, and glance, forming a digital echo chamber that intensified the pressure within the studio itself, feeding back into the real-time storm as Kirk, his chest heaving, lunged verbally at Joc, accusing her of manipulation, betrayal, and long-concealed schemes, while Joc, trembling with a mix of fear and defiance, fired back with blistering counterclaims of deceit, exploitation, and calculated sabotage, each statement layered with the weight of past grievances, private wounds, and unspoken history. The verbal war punctuated by slamming of props, overturned chairs, and abrupt gestures that conveyed emotional depth beyond words. And as the hours dragged on, moments of raw, unfiltered vulnerability emerged, with Joc whispering through tears about her exhaustion and longing for normalcy, and Kirk, his own defenses momentarily cracking, allowing fleeting glimpses of regret and acknowledgement, only to harden again and resume his assault. A rhythm that became almost hypnotic in its repetition and intensity, drawing in everyone present as witnesses, unwilling yet powerless to look away. The set itself a chaotic reflection of the storm raging within, with broken props, scattered scripts, and bent lighting stands bearing silent testimony to the physical manifestation of the emotional wreckage. And in this charged environment, family members attempted cautious interventions, their voices measured yet often drowned out, each effort carrying risk, potentially calming the storm or exacerbating it, while crew members maneuvered between safety and documentation, balancing their need to protect the participants with the imperative to capture every electrifying moment for posterity. As the confrontation became a study in human extremes, where every glance, every tone, every gesture carried layers of meaning, historical context, and psychological weight, Kirk and Joc's duo living, breathing entity in itself, fed by years of unresolved tension and fueled by the immediacy of the present conflict, while social media amplified every nuance, every micro-expression, every expletive, creating a feedback loop that pushed both parties further into the spiral, each online reaction, meme, or comment becoming another spark in an already combustible atmosphere. And yet amidst the storm, brief flashes of humanity shone through, Joc's voice softening in fleeting moments of fear and exhaustion, Kirk's expressions revealing vulnerability before quickly armor closing into anger and defensiveness, the oscillation between rage and fragility creating a almost magnetic effect, holding everyone, family, crew, and fans captive, unable to disengage from the unfolding spectacle. As the psychological and emotional tension escalated further, each accusation, counterclaim, and shouted confession layered with complexity, stakes multiplying as each interaction reshaped alliances, exposed hidden weaknesses, and magnified the drama, while the physical set bore continuous evidence of the ongoing turmoil. Chairs tipped, scripts scattered like confetti, lighting equipment jostled, and cameras capturing every frame, turning the environment itself into a participant in the chaos, reflecting and amplifying the energy of the confrontation. And as the verbal and emotional barrage continued, Kirk and Joc's exchanges became almost ritualistic, a relentless cycle of attack, defense, exposure, and counterattack, each phrase imbued with historical, personal, and psychological weight, every gesture a declaration of dominance or a plea for understanding, every glance a weapon and a confession, while family members and friends remained suspended in careful observation, conscious that any intervention could either stabilize the situation or ignite a new eruption, and crew members, operating at the limits of endurance, navigated the space with calculated precision, aware that both safety and documentation depended on their movements, capturing a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle of human emotion in its most extreme, unfiltered form, while online audiences dissected, debated, and amplified every second. The digital reflection of the confrontation feeding directly back into the physical intensity, a symbiotic cycle of chaos and spectacle. The storm showing no sign of abatement, with Kirk's voice cutting sharp and accusing, Joc's retorts relentless and piercing, and the room itself vibrating under the weight of unrestrained human emotion. The confrontation evolving into a phenomenon that transcended ordinary reality television, an uncontainable force where anger, pride, vulnerability, history, and spectacle merged into a single, overwhelming experience that held all participants in thrall, compelling attention, provoking reaction, and etching itself into memory as an unprecedented display of emotional extremity, as hours stretched interminably. The verbal duel remaining unstoppable, the room's energy a living, breathing testament to the power of unfiltered human conflict, and through every shout, every tearful whisper, every sharp accusation, the narrative unfolded relentlessly, each moment a thread in the complex tapestry of betrayal, fury, and fleeting vulnerability, drawing everyone present, family, friends, crew, and fans deeper into its orbit, unable to look away, while the story continued to spiral, building toward a climax that promised to leave a permanent mark on the set, the show, and the lives of Kirk and Joc themselves. As the relentless storm of emotion, spectacle, and human intensity continued, unbroken, unstoppable, and utterly mesmerizing, a force that defined every heartbeat, every breath, and every action in that charged, unforgettable studio, an epic chronicle of chaos, humanity, and raw reality stretching endlessly, consuming all in its path, and leaving no soul untouched. The tension in the studio had reached a point where it seemed to warp reality itself. Kirk and Joc locked in a relentless cycle of accusation, defiance, and emotional exposure that had grown far beyond the bounds of a simple dispute, their words, sharp and rapid, bouncing off the walls and ricocheting into the hearts and minds of everyone present, creating a charged atmosphere in which every glance, gesture, and syllable carried monumental weight, while crew members, already fatigued from hours of frantic filming, maneuvered with the delicate precision of tightrope walkers, adjusting cameras, repositioning lighting, and dodging flying objects, all while trying to maintain continuity and prevent physical escalation. Yet the storm of human emotion proved unstoppable, swirling around the set like a living entity, feeding on the fears, loyalties, and anxieties of family, friends, and staff, who all felt the pull of the central duel between Kirk and Joc, their own pulse quickening with every shouted phrase and tearful confession, the air thick with the scent of adrenaline and the residual tension of unleashed grievances. And as the confrontation escalated, Kirk, his chest heaving and eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and desperation, launched into a blistering verbal tirade, accusing Joc of manipulation, deception, and hidden schemes that threatened to destabilize not only their personal lives but the integrity of the show itself, while Joc, equally fierce, countered with scathing accusations of betrayal, exploitation, and emotional sabotage, each word cutting like a blade and drawing visible reactions from everyone around, the energy in the room intensifying with each volley, each exclamation, and each desperate plea for recognition or understanding. As friends and family tried cautiously to mediate, their voices gentle but often drowned out by the overwhelming cacophony of anger and pain, while crew members moved strategically to protect both the participants and the integrity of the filming, cameras rolling relentlessly to capture every nuance of body language, every flicker of emotion, and every micro-expression that told stories far deeper than the words alone. And online, the digital audience erupted in real time, replaying every frame, dissecting every inflection, and debating fiercely over who bore responsibility, whose actions were justified, and what the ultimate consequences might be, creating a global echo chamber that fed back into the studio, amplifying the pressure, intensity, and stakes, while the physical set became a chaotic reflection of the internal storm, with toppled chairs, scattered scripts, and damaged props standing as silent witnesses to the raw human drama unfolding, each item a testament to the power of unrestrained emotion and the fragility of controlled spaces under extreme psychological stress. And amidst the fury, moments of human vulnerability appeared, fleeting yet profound, as Joc's voice faltered while revealing her exhaustion, fear, and desire for peace, and Kirk's expression softened briefly, a glimpse of remorse and humanity breaking through the armor of anger, only to harden again as the cycle of conflict resumed, creating a hypnotic oscillation between aggression and fragility that held everyone captive, every heartbeat and breath synchronized with the rhythm of the confrontation. And the hours stretched on, tension building relentlessly as the verbal duel intensified, accusations and defenses layering upon one another like sediment in a geological formation, deepening the complexity of motives, histories, and emotional stakes, while small physical movements, gestures of frustration, slammed objects, abrupt turns punctuated the dialogue, adding weight and urgency, and drawing involuntary reactions from all present, family members frozen in careful observation, crew members balancing safety with the necessity of documentation, and the social media audience dissecting, theorizing, and amplifying every microsecond. hashtags trending globally, fan theories proliferating, reaction videos multiplying, all feeding the storm within the studio, creating a feedback loop where performance and genuine emotion blurred indistinguishably, amplifying intensity to near unmanageable levels. And yet, even in the eye of this storm, flashes of humanity emerged. Joc's whispered confessions of vulnerability, Kirk's fleeting signs of regret, moments that suggested the depth of connection and history underpinning the conflict. The oscillation between rage and tenderness, creating a complex, mesmerizing spectacle that riveted every observer. And the psychological tension escalated further, as each accusation, counterclaim, and emotionally charged statement reshaped alliances, exposed hidden weaknesses, and forced everyone in the room to navigate the intricate web of relationships, loyalties, and personal history with extreme care. While crew members, operating at the limits of endurance, maintained a careful choreography of protection and documentation, cameras capturing every frame, every glance, every tear, and every tremor of anger or vulnerability, while the digital audience continued to dissect and amplify, creating a living, breathing storm of attention, emotion, and engagement that fed directly back into the confrontation, pushing Kirk and Joc to even greater extremes, their exchanges becoming almost ritualistic in their relentlessness, words and gestures imbued with layers of historical, personal, and psychological significance, each movement a declaration, each glance a challenge, and each tear a revelation, the tension so thick it seemed almost tangible. And as the verbal and emotional barrage continued, Kirk and Joc became mythic figures in their own storm, embodiments of human extremity, pride, vulnerability, and relentless intensity, the room vibrating with unrelenting energy. And yet, within this chaos, there remained a strange, almost magnetic beauty, the raw display of emotion, the oscillation of power and vulnerability, the intricate dance of confrontation and fleeting reconciliation holding everyone, friends, family, crew, and fans, captive. The rhythm of anger and fragility hypnotic and impossible to ignore, as the confrontation unfolded into a relentless, unstoppable spectacle that redefined ordinary reality, creating a narrative where human emotion, history, pride, and fragility converged into a single, overwhelming, and unforgettable event. Hours stretching endlessly as Kirk and Joc's duel remained unbroken, unstoppable, and utterly mesmerizing, an epic display of human conflict, psychological complexity, and raw, unfiltered emotion that gripped every heart and mind present, a perfect storm of intensity, vulnerability, and spectacle, leaving no participant untouched, no observer unmoved, and no moment unrecorded, the confrontation continuing to surge, relentless, consuming, and unforgettable. As the story of Kirk and Joc's unyielding battle etched itself into the annals of both reality television and human memory, an unparalleled chronicle of chaos, emotion, and spectacle, the intensity within the studio had reached a fever pitch, a maelstrom of emotion so thick it seemed to warp reality itself. As Kirk and Joc continued their unrelenting verbal duel, their words slicing through the air like knives, each accusation, counterclaim, and shouted confession layered with personal history, long-held grievances, and a desperate need for control and recognition. And as their voices collided, the room became a living embodiment of chaos, with crew members ducking behind cameras and overturned chairs, moving with careful precision to capture every micro-expression while simultaneously preventing the physical eruption of violence. Every gesture and glance amplified in significance, the air vibrating with the force of raw, unfiltered human emotion, while friends and family, caught between loyalty and fear, attempted to mediate, their interventions cautious, tentative, often drowned out by the roar of conflict. And yet, even amidst the cacophony, glimpses of vulnerability pierced through, Joc's voice breaking as she confessed exhaustion and fear, Kirk's chest rising and falling as fleeting remorse flickered across his expression before hardening again into defiance, a hypnotic oscillation between rage and fragility that held every observer captive, both physically present and online. As social media erupted in real time, clips spreading like wildfire, hashtags trending globally, fans dissecting every nuance, every inflection, every micro-movement, forming a digital echo chamber that amplified the pressure in the studio, feeding back into the confrontation with relentless intensity, while the physical set mirrored the storm within, toppled chairs, scattered props, and bent lighting equipment standing as silent witnesses to the destruction wrought by emotion unchecked, the studio itself seeming to pulse and breathe with the energy of the unfolding spectacle. And the hours dragged on as Kirk's accusations intensified, claiming manipulation, hidden agendas, and orchestrated betrayals. while Joc's retorts cut equally deep, charging Kirk with deceit, emotional exploitation, and calculated sabotage, each volley of words layered with historical context, psychological complexity, and emotional weight, while small physical movements punctuated the exchanges. Hands slammed onto tables, chairs tipped, papers fluttered across the floor. Crew members intervened with precision born of necessity, and friends and family watched with bated breath, aware that the slightest misstep could escalate the situation beyond recovery, all while cameras rolled, capturing the full spectrum of human emotion in painstaking detail, and the online audience dissected, debated, and amplified every frame, creating a continuous feedback loop where Kirk and Joc's storm of emotion was fed by attention, speculation, and the relentless scrutiny of millions. And amidst this relentless maelstrom, the human element remained painfully, vividly present, Joc's eyes glistening with tears despite her defiance, Kirk's expressions shifting from fury to fleeting remorse and back again, the oscillation between aggression and vulnerability hypnotic, drawing every participant, observer, and fan into the gravity of the unfolding drama. And as the conflict wore on, alliances shifted, loyalties were tested, and the emotional stakes rose higher, the confrontation becoming a living, breathing entity, fed by history, pride, fear, and the desire for vindication. The room itself charged with a kinetic energy that made every movement and word resonate with amplified significance, while crew members, operating on adrenaline and instinct, danced between documentation and de-escalation, capturing every frame while protecting both people and property. And the social media storm raged alongside, as fans dissected every nuance, replayed every word, created memes and debated endlessly, turning Kirk and Joc's private struggle into a global spectacle, while inside the studio, the emotional intensity continued to escalate, each moment layered with the weight of past grievances, unspoken fears, and the raw, unfiltered reality of human conflict. The set itself bearing silent witness to the unfolding drama. Props broken, chairs overturned, script scattered, lighting equipment bent, all reflecting the chaos that had become physical, visual, and psychological. And amidst it all, fleeting moments of shared humanity emerged, Joc whispering confessions of fear and desire for understanding, Kirk's defenses cracking in brief flashes, a tension between anger and vulnerability that kept everyone present on edge, heartbeats synchronized to the rhythm of the confrontation, breaths held, and attention fixed entirely on the interplay of emotion and action before them, while online, the storm mirrored and amplified. As clips circulated, hashtags trended, reactions multiplied, fans theorized, judged, and projected, forming a digital echo chamber that further intensified the live spectacle, feeding back into the studio, accelerating the emotional momentum. And as ours turned into a seemingly endless cycle, Kirk and Joc's duel became almost ritualistic, a relentless loop of attack, defense, confession, and counterattack, each movement and word imbued with psychological, historical, and emotional significance, their presence mythic in its intensity, the room vibrating with the energy of unrelenting human emotion. And yet within the chaos, a strange, compelling beauty emerged, the display of raw emotion, the interplay between dominance and vulnerability, aggression and fragility, holding every observer captive, from friends and family to crew and global audiences. The rhythm of the storm hypnotic, the intensity inescapable, a living, breathing chronicle of human extremity, psychological complexity, and unfiltered drama. And through every shout, every tear, every gesture, the narrative unfolded, threads of betrayal, pride, and fleeting tenderness weaving together to create a tapestry of unforgettable spectacle, the confrontation building inexorably toward a climax that promised to leave indelible marks on reputations, relationships, and the history of reality television itself. As Kirk and Joc remained locked in their unrelenting battle, the room alive with energy, emotion, and anticipation, each second a testament to the power of unrestrained human conflict. And as the hours continued to stretch, the story expanded into an epic, relentless chronicle of chaos, passion, and psychological intensity, consuming every heartbeat, every thought, and every observer, leaving nothing untouched, and no one able to look away. The storm of Kirk and Joc's emotions continuing to surge, unstoppable, uncontainable, and utterly mesmerizing, an unparalleled spectacle of human drama, raw intensity, and unforgettable emotional extremity that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling. A perfect storm of pride, vulnerability, and relentless conflict that consumed all in its path, shaping lives, memories, and the very fabric of the reality unfolding before everyone's eyes. while the world watched, captivated, horrified, and unable to turn away. The chaos in the studio had reached a level that seemed almost apocalyptic, as if every ounce of tension, resentment, and unspoken history between Kirk and Joc had coalesced into a single, living force that radiated through every corner of the set, making the air itself thick and heavy, vibrating with the energy of their escalating confrontation. Every word, every gesture, every breath charged with meaning and menace, while the crew, operating at the absolute limits of endurance and composure, navigated a delicate ballet between capturing every explosive moment and preventing the eruption. From spilling into irreversible physical conflict, dodging overturned chairs, scattered props, and flailing limbs while coordinating camera angles, adjusting lighting, and maintaining a semblance of order amidst the storm, their movements precise yet frantic, a choreography born of necessity and instinct, while friends and family, caught in the crossfire of emotion, fear, and loyalty, attempted to intervene with measured voices, gentle touches, and pleading gestures, only to be met with waves of verbal fury, accusations, and tears that left them suspended in a state of helpless tension. And all the while, the digital world mirrored and amplified every second. Clips of shouting, gesturing, and emotional vulnerability spreading across social media at lightning speed. Hashtags trending, fans dissecting every inflection, every pause, every trembling hand, creating a feedback loop that intensified the emotional storm within the studio, feeding into Kirk and Joc's already heightened awareness of their audience and inflaming their confrontation with an unstoppable force. And as hours wore on, the verbal battle evolved into a psychological warfare of staggering complexity, each accusation layered with personal history, hidden motives, and raw emotional weight, each retort cutting as sharply as any physical strike. While moments of vulnerability punctuated the fury, Joc's voice breaking as she whispered about exhaustion, fear, and the longing for understanding, and Kirk's gaze flickering with brief glimpses of remorse and self-awareness before snapping back into anger. The oscillation between rage and fragility creating a hypnotic rhythm that held everyone present, from family to crew, captive, hearts racing, breaths caught, each person acutely aware that the next word could tip the balance into irreversible chaos, while the set itself became a physical manifestation of the emotional tempest, with toppled chairs, scattered scripts, bent lighting stands, and broken props forming a chaotic landscape that mirrored the psychological destruction unfolding within the room. And through it all, the dynamic between Kirk and Joc became almost mythic, a relentless, ritualistic duel of pride, vulnerability, and psychological extremity. Their words, gestures, and expressions loaded with history, meaning, and consequence, while crew members operated with split-second timing to capture every micro-expression, every subtle shift in tone, every tremor of emotion that told the deeper story behind the visible conflict, all while online audiences dissected, theorized, and amplified every moment, creating an unprecedented level of attention and scrutiny, a global echo chamber that fed directly back into the confrontation, escalating the intensity further, each viral clip and trending hashtag acting as a catalyst that made both Kirk and Joc more unyielding, more desperate to assert dominance, and more vulnerable in the same heartbeat, the storm of human emotion growing ever more complex, layered, and unstoppable, as friends and family navigated a minefield of loyalty, fear, and intervention, while crew members maintained a delicate balance of safety and documentation, cameras rolling relentlessly, capturing the full spectrum of emotion, while the physical studio environment became a silent witness to the storm. Broken props, scattered papers, overturned furniture, and tilted lighting stands marking the tangible aftermath of the psychological and emotional barrage. And yet, amid the chaos, brief flashes of raw humanity pierced through. Joc's whispered confessions, tears pooling and trembling in her voice, Kirk's fleeting expressions of regret and self-awareness, the oscillation between anger and fragility, hypnotic and magnetic, holding all observers in a state of suspended attention, the confrontation becoming a living, breathing entity, fed by history, pride, vulnerability, and unspoken truths, while the digital world simultaneously captured, amplified, and replayed every moment, creating a continuous feedback loop that intensified the storm. The energy in the studio almost palpable, every word and gesture magnified by the presence of millions of virtual witnesses. And as the hours dragged on, the conflict took on new dimensions, with accusations and counter-accusations becoming ever more intricate, each layer revealing hidden betrayals, long-simmering resentments, and deep emotional fractures. The verbal barrage, punctuated by physical movements, slammed tables, Tipping chairs, papers scattering across the floor. Abrupt gestures that punctuated the conversation with visual intensity. The rhythm of human emotion in full, unfiltered display. Friends and family watching with bated breath, hyperaware that any intervention could either stabilize the storm or accelerate it into irreversible destruction, while crew members continued their dance of precise movements, capturing the chaos while mitigating danger. And the online audience, now a massive, engaged, and relentless presence, amplified every micro-moment, every exclamation, every gesture, fueling the storm from a distance, creating a layer of pressure that both Kirk and Joc could not ignore. Their duel now not only a personal and psychological battlefield but a spectacle of unprecedented scale. The room itself vibrating with the intensity of unrestrained human emotion, as each minute stretched into eternity. Kirk and Joc locked in a continuous loop of verbal, emotional, and psychological engagement. The oscillation of rage and vulnerability hypnotic, mesmerizing, and terrifying in equal measure. The intensity so complete that it seemed to suspend the very passage of time, each word, glance, and movement carrying the weight of all that had come before, while the social media feedback loop continued to reinforce, magnify, and intensify every action, every phrase, every tear and tremor. The global audience feeding into the storm and turning private chaos into worldwide spectacle, creating an event that was as mesmerizing as it was destructive, while friends, family, and crew navigated the increasingly complex emotional landscape, balancing intervention, observation, and survival with skill born of necessity, every breath caught, every heartbeat racing in synchronization with the relentless rhythm of conflict. The studio, a living organism pulsing with energy, intensity, and emotional volatility, while Kirk and Joc remained at its core, mythic figures in a storm of pride, vengeance, vulnerability, and raw, unfiltered human drama. The confrontation stretching endlessly, unstoppable, and utterly mesmerizing, a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle of human emotion and psychological extremity, breaking the boundaries of ordinary reality television, leaving indelible marks on every person present, every observer online, and on the very memory of the show itself. The narrative of chaos, betrayal, anger, and fleeting tenderness building without pause, layer upon layer of emotion, history, and intensity, the storm consuming all in its path, unstoppable, uncontainable, and utterly unforgettable. As Kirk and Joc continued to battle, their verbal and emotional duel a relentless, hypnotic, and captivating force, defining the studio, the show, and the memories of all who bore witness. A perfect storm of human extremity, spectacle, and unfiltered reality. The storm within the studio refused to abate, escalating beyond anything anyone could have anticipated. Kirk and Joc's confrontation stretching into an unrelenting whirlwind of emotion, history, and psychological warfare, their voices ricocheting off the walls, each accusation and counterclaim sharpened by years of unresolved conflict, every gesture loaded with the weight of past betrayals, personal grievances, and desperate attempts to assert dominance or be understood, while the crew moved with meticulous precision, balancing the need to capture every electrifying moment with the imperative to prevent the confrontation from devolving into physical violence. Cameras rolling, lights adjusted, props shifted cautiously to avoid injury, yet the chaos was contagious, spreading to friends, family, and staff, each person's pulse quickening as they tried to navigate the dangerous waters of intervention and observation. The energy in the room thick and almost suffocating, and the social media universe mirrored the intensity in real time, clips going viral within minutes, fans dissecting every expression, every syllable, every subtle inflection, creating a digital pressure cooker that amplified the stakes in the studio even further. The feedback loop between the live confrontation and global audience creating a tension so dense it felt almost tangible, while Kirk's voice, laced with fury and desperation, lashed out with accusations of manipulation, deceit, and emotional exploitation, and Joc, equally unrelenting, fired back with scathing counters about betrayal, strategic sabotage, and long-hidden secrets. Their exchanges a mesmerizing rhythm of attack, defense, and brief, fleeting moments of vulnerability that pierced through the armor of rage. As Joc's voice trembled while revealing fear and exhaustion, and Kirk's expressions betrayed glimpses of regret and recognition of his own flaws before hardening again into defiance, creating a hypnotic oscillation that captivated everyone present, the tension between rage and fragility making each heartbeat in the room feel synchronized to the unpredictable rhythm of the duel. While props were thrown, chairs toppled, and scripts scattered, the physical space, a chaotic reflection of the emotional turbulence, the studio itself seeming to pulse with the intensity, alive with the energy of unfiltered human emotion. As friends and family tried in vain to mediate, their carefully measured interventions often drowned out by the roar of verbal combat, while crew members navigated the set with practiced agility, capturing every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion, every tremor of voice, understanding that this spectacle was unprecedented in scale and intensity, and the online audience, a relentless digital presence, amplified the storm, dissecting, theorizing, and debating every detail, pushing Kirk and Joc further into extremes. The confrontation, now a full-blown cultural event, a spectacle of raw human emotion and psychological complexity that was impossible to ignore. As the hours wore on, the verbal battle layered with deeper historical context, revealing hidden alliances, long-simmering resentments, and emotional fissures that ran far deeper than anyone had realized, while small physical movements punctuated the exchanges, slamming tables, tipping chairs, sharp gestures, each carrying amplified significance, a visual punctuation to the storm of words. Friends and family on the edge of panic, uncertain how to intervene without escalating, crew members executing a precise choreography of protection and documentation, all while the digital storm mirrored and intensified the live confrontation. Global audiences engaging in real time, their attention feeding the intensity in the room, creating a symbiotic cycle of chaos and spectacle that made both Kirk and Joc hyper-aware of the world beyond the studio, further fueling their emotional extremes. The oscillation between rage and vulnerability hypnotic, the room vibrating with the raw energy of conflict, each moment a study in human psychology and the complexity of relationships, alliances, and personal history, the confrontation evolving into a ritualistic duel, a relentless loop of accusation, counterattack, confession, and exposure, each layer more complex and revealing than the last. The air thick with tension, sweat, and adrenaline, every heartbeat in sync with the escalating storm. And yet amidst the chaos, moments of humanity pierced through. Joc's whispered admissions of fear and longing for understanding. Kirk's fleeting flashes of remorse and acknowledgement. The oscillation between aggression and vulnerability, mesmerizing and terrifying, drawing everyone deeper into the vortex of emotion. The confrontation now a mythic spectacle. The room charged with a living, breathing energy that seemed to expand and contract with the participants' emotional intensity, while every second played out under the scrutiny of both immediate witnesses and the relentless digital audience. Hashtags trending, clips replayed millions of times, online debates raging, fans picking apart micro-expressions and tone, creating a feedback loop that turned private chaos into a global event, every comment and share adding fuel to the fire. And as the hours continued, the duel took on almost theatrical proportions. Each interaction a performance, and yet raw and unfiltered in its authenticity. The stakes escalating beyond personal conflict into a cultural phenomenon, the verbal and emotional storm growing ever more layered, complex, and intense, while friends, family, and crew navigated a labyrinth of safety, loyalty, and observation, each moment laden with possibility and danger. Cameras capturing the full spectrum of human emotion, from fury to vulnerability, from defiance to fleeting regret, the physical studio environment mirroring the psychological tempest, broken props, overturned chairs, scattered scripts, and bent equipment mapping the destruction wrought by unchecked emotion. And through it all, Kirk and Joc remained at the center, mythic figures in a storm of their own making, a perfect storm of pride, vulnerability, rage, and spectacle, their conflict stretching endlessly, unstoppable, utterly mesmerizing, a relentless chronicle of chaos, human extremity, and psychological intensity, consuming everyone in its path, leaving no heart untouched, no mind unmoved, and no moment unrecorded, the story growing with every passing second, a tapestry of betrayal, emotion, history, and spectacle, expanding outward in waves that engulfed crew, family, friends, and the global audience, creating an experience that would leave permanent marks on every memory, a saga of unrelenting human emotion and dramatic spectacle. And the confrontation continued, an unstoppable force of nature, raw, mesmerizing, and unforgettable, as Kirk and Joc's storm of emotion, words, and gestures consumed the studio, the audience, and the very essence of reality itself, a breathtaking, chaotic, and hypnotic spectacle of human extremity that no one could look away from, a perfect collision of pride, fury, vulnerability, and spectacle that would be remembered long after the cameras stopped rolling, every heartbeat, every breath, every glance a testament to the unstoppable force of unfiltered human drama and intensity. The intensity of the confrontation between Kirk and Joc had reached a point where the very air seemed to tremble under the weight of unbridled emotion. The studio transformed into a pressure cooker of rage, fear, and desperate need for vindication. As every word spoken carried the weight of years of unresolved tension, every gesture a physical manifestation of pride, hurt, and the raw need to dominate or be understood. And the crew, moving with near impossible precision, navigated the chaotic space. Cameras trained on the combatants, lights adjusted on the fly, props moved out of harm's way, while simultaneously attempting to maintain a semblance of order. Their movements a delicate dance between documentation and de-escalation, as friends and family hovered, torn between stepping in to calm the storm and holding back to avoid inflaming it further, the room vibrating with energy, the emotional charge almost tangible, and online. The spectacle had erupted into a global frenzy, clips circulating instantaneously, fans dissecting every micro-expression, analyzing every tone of voice, speculating endlessly about hidden motives, alliances, and the long history of grievances that had brought Kirk and Joc to this explosive climax. Their virtual attention feeding directly into the real-time intensity, amplifying every shout, tear, and gesture, creating a feedback loop that made each second feel even more consequential. While Kirk's voice rang out, sharp and accusing, filled with anger, desperation, and a need to assert control, targeting every flaw, mistake, and perceived betrayal, while Joc countered with equal ferocity, her words a mixture of pain, defiance, and unwavering insistence on being heard and validated, their exchanges a relentless cycle of attack and counterattack, interspersed with moments of startling vulnerability, Joc's voice quivering as she admitted exhaustion and fear, Kirk's eyes flickering with brief glimpses of remorse and self-awareness before hardening once more, creating a hypnotic rhythm that held everyone present captive, their hearts racing, breaths held, emotions teetering on the edge of eruption, and the physical space around them reflected the chaos within. Chairs overturned, scripts scattered, props damaged, lighting stands bent, all serving as tangible evidence of the storm raging between the two, a visual echo of psychological and emotional devastation, while crew members continued their near-impossible task of capturing every moment without getting caught in the crossfire, every movement choreographed to protect, preserve, and document. The very floor of the studio a testament to the intensity of unrestrained human emotion, while online, the global audience became an omnipresent force, amplifying the tension, debating motives, projecting interpretations, turning the private war into a public spectacle of unprecedented scale. Hashtags trending, memes created, reactions multiplied, each digital echo feeding the intensity back into the studio, and as hours passed, the confrontation evolved beyond mere argument into something almost ritualistic, a relentless loop of accusation, confession, retaliation, and fleeting reconciliation, each layer more complex and revealing than the last. Every interaction steeped in psychological depth, historical context, and personal stakes, with Kirk and Joc becoming near-mythic figures in their own unfolding drama, their emotional states fluctuating between explosive rage and fragile vulnerability, the oscillation hypnotic, drawing all witnesses, family, friends, crew into the orbit of the conflict, hearts synchronized to the unpredictable rhythm of the duel, breaths caught at every sharp intake or trembling syllable, the storm consuming attention, focus, and energy, the very walls vibrating with the weight of emotion, while small gestures punctuated the verbal onslaught, hands slamming on tables, chairs tipping, papers fluttering across the floor, sudden turns of the head, each movement charged with layered meaning, historical weight, and emotional intensity, friends and family attempting interventions with cautious voices and tentative gestures, only to be drowned out by the roar of human emotion, crew members moving like shadows, capturing everything, aware that this was an unprecedented event in reality television, while the digital feedback loop continued, unabated, millions watching, commenting, sharing, theorizing, projecting, feeding the energy back into the studio, amplifying every every tremor of emotion, and every whispered confession, the confrontation becoming an unstoppable force of human drama and psychological complexity. As ours turned into what felt like days, Kirk and Joc's verbal and emotional duel continuing without pause, every accusation, every retort, every tear and gesture adding new layers to the story, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating, the physical set a mirror of the chaos within, broken props, scattered papers, overturned chairs, mapping the emotional landscape, the studio alive with the kinetic energy of unfiltered human emotion, while the rhythm of aggression and vulnerability hypnotized all who were present. The oscillation between fury and fragility keeping everyone on edge, the spectacle simultaneously horrifying and mesmerizing, the emotional storm escalating, spiraling, consuming, each second building on the last. Kirk and Joc locked in a battle that was as psychological as it was emotional. Their every movement and word, a weapon, a confession, a demand, a plea, all layered with history, pride, fear, and vulnerability, the room itself seeming to pulse with the energy of unrestrained human emotion. While outside the studio, online audiences amplified every moment, the digital echo chamber, magnifying intensity, reactions multiplying, opinions clashing, the real-time feedback loop transforming private chaos into global spectacle, each click, share, comment, and debate adding fuel to the fire. Kirk and Joc's conflict now larger than the studio, larger than the show, a phenomenon of human extremity, spectacle, and psychological drama, as ours stretched into an almost timeless continuum, the verbal, emotional, and psychological duel showing no signs of stopping, each micro-expression, each tremor, each gesture carrying the weight of history, personal stakes, and the unyielding pressure of the global audience, their conflict evolving into a living entity, a storm of pride, betrayal, vulnerability, and raw emotion that consumed every person in the studio, every crew member, every observer, drawing all into its orbit, impossible to ignore, mesmerizing in its intensity, unstoppable in its momentum. As Kirk and Joc continued, the room vibrating, the studio alive with chaos, the emotional extremity unprecedented, the spectacle of human conflict stretching outward in layers of sound, gesture, and psychological resonance, every heartbeat caught, every breath synchronized, the oscillation of rage and fragility hypnotic, drawing everyone further into the vortex, the confrontation becoming both performance and raw, unfiltered reality, each word a weapon and a confession, every gesture a declaration and a plea, the storm unstoppable, uncontainable, and utterly mesmerizing, a living chronicle of chaos, emotion, and psychological extremity that consumed all in its path, leaving no memory untouched, no soul unmoved, and no moment unrecorded, the spectacle stretching onward, infinite in its intensity, as Kirk and Joc's unrelenting duel continued, a perfect collision of fury, vulnerability, pride, and spectacle that would echo long after the cameras stopped rolling, a breathtaking, chaotic hypnotic force of human emotion, drama, and unfiltered intensity, shaping the lives, memories, and hearts of all who bore witness, inside the studio and across the globe, an unforgettable saga of human extremity and relentless conflict that refused to end. And so, as you've watched this whirlwind of drama, conflict, and raw human emotion unfold before your eyes, it's impossible not to feel the gravity of every word, every glance, every gesture, and every unspoken tension that has filled this room, transforming a simple show into a spectacle of unforgettable intensity, a moment in reality television history that has left fans shocked, hearts racing, and conversations erupting across social media around the world. Now, it's your turn to weigh in, to become part of the discussion, because every opinion matters, every reaction adds to the collective experience, and every voice helps shape the legacy of what we've all witnessed today, whether it's the fierce accusations, the moments of vulnerability, the betrayals that cut so deep, or the flashes of fleeting remorse that reminded us, even amidst chaos, of the human side of the conflict. Imagine yourself in the room, standing among the crew, the family, the friends, feeling the intensity of every heartbeat, hearing every shouted word, seeing every tear, every trembling hand, sensing the energy bouncing off the walls, and recognizing that your perspective on these events is just as vital as any other, because reality is not just what happens on screen, it's what you, the audience, feel, interpret, and respond to. So take a moment to reflect. Who do you think carries the weight of responsibility in this storm? Whose emotions do you empathize with most? Did Kirk cross a line, or was Joc equally culpable in the escalating tension? Your insights are invaluable, and sharing them helps not only build a community of fans who live and breathe this drama, but also gives context to the cultural phenomenon that has emerged from this single, unforgettable episode. And while you're reflecting, don't forget that engagement is part of the experience. By liking this video, you signal your recognition of the artistry, the intensity, and the storytelling that has gone into capturing these moments, acknowledging the work of everyone involved, from the cast to the crew, while also making it possible for more people to witness, analyze, and discuss what has happened. Subscribing ensures you remain connected to every new twist, every subsequent revelation, and every future chapter in the lives of Kirk and Joc. Because the story does not end, here the echoes of this clash will reverberate, and new developments are sure to arise, and by subscribing, you claim a front row seat to all of it, a space to continue observing, reacting, and participating in the unfolding narrative. Commenting is perhaps the most powerful way to interact, because it allows your voice to be heard alongside thousands of others, creating a dialogue that is dynamic, alive, and continuously evolving. Your thoughts, interpretations, and emotions contribute to the collective memory of this moment, shaping how it will be remembered and discussed long after the cameras stop rolling, long after the social media feeds move on, and long after the studio lights are packed away. Because this is not just a story being told, it's a living conversation between you and the spectacle, between personal judgment and public perception, and every comment you leave adds texture, depth, and context to what has already unfolded. Think about it, your perspective might be the one that resonates most with others, the one that sparks debate, the one that opens new avenues of understanding, because everyone experiences this drama differently, and sharing that experience enriches the community of fans who are watching as intensely as you are, feeling every rise and fall of emotion, every strategic move, every personal revelation, and every escalation in tension, making you not just a passive observer, but an active participant in the living story that has captured the attention of thousands, even millions, around the globe. And remember, while we've dissected, dramatized, and magnified every confrontation, every tear, every shout, the power of this video lies not only in what has been shown but in how you interact with it, because your reactions, likes, comments, and subscriptions create a ripple effect that extends far beyond a single studio, a single episode, a single story. They ensure that the conversation continues, that the spectacle is recognized, and that the legacy of what unfolded is preserved, debated, and celebrated. So, don't hesitate, click that like button to show your engagement, subscribe to stay informed and involved with every new development, and comment below to share your thoughts, interpretations, and feelings about this unforgettable clash. Because your participation is what turns a video into a communal experience, a story into a cultural phenomenon, and an isolated event into a shared journey that connects fans, viewers, and observers worldwide. Engage fully, immerse yourself completely, and let your voice be part of the story, because this drama is bigger than the studio, bigger than the cameras, bigger than Kirk and Joc. It belongs to all of us who watch, react, and remember, and your interaction ensures that the energy, the tension, and the spectacle will live on, sparking conversations, debates, and emotions long after the final word has been spoken, long after the last tear has fallen, and long after the cameras have stopped rolling, cementing this clash as a defining moment in the history of reality television, a moment that will be dissected, referenced, and remembered for years to come. And by engaging with it, by liking, subscribing, and commenting, you are claiming your place in that history, becoming part of the story, and ensuring that your voice is heard in the ongoing conversation surrounding this unforgettable, explosive, and mesmerizing showdown.